Are we recording now? Yes, okay, great. Well, welcome to the August 26th, 2020 edition of the Oak Grove Community Council meeting. My name is Joseph Edge. I am the chair of the Oak Grove Community Council. And the first thing I'd like to do is give our officers a chance to introduce themselves, or our board of directors in attendance. So first up, Valerie is our vice chair.
Hi,
just say your name and neighborhood. And
I'm Valerie Chapman. I'm the vice chair, and I live a couple blocks, or a block and a half from the trolley trail on Evergreen Street.
And Jane?
Oak Grove Boulevard. I'm also the treasurer, and so while I'm here live, I will give the treasurer report. We had no new funds for June, July, or August. I think I had mentioned, perhaps it was at the board meeting, the county reimbursement for $150 from last year's expenses came through, which brings our new checking account balance to $2,182.38.
Awesome, thank you. And Jim, please introduce yourself and your neighborhood. Jim, are you there? You're on mute.
I'm Jim Meyer, and I'm a director at large, and I live on the corner of Oak Grove Boulevard and River Forest Drive. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And our secretary is not here right now, so we don't have the secretary report or but I will ask if there are any corrections to the meeting minutes that were sent out the last time that Jan sent out a notification. And if none, then we will consider those to be correct as distributed. Hearing none, I think we'll just move on. So we already had the treasurer's update. And so let's see, I guess we're going to move right into our program. So the first order of business tonight is Philip Mason Joyner from the Clackamas County Health and Human Services. He's our public health director. I'd like to invite Philip to unmute his microphone and let us know what the county is doing about the current public health response to COVID-19.
Thanks, Joseph. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Well, I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to spend a little bit of time this evening talking about some of the great work that our county is doing to respond to COVID-19, and hopefully any questions that you have. Oh, I see Commissioner Savas is here too, so he can help me with questions as well. But as Joseph said, I'm Philip Mason Joyner. I'm Director of Public Health for the county. I'm also one of the incident commanders within our Emergency Operations Center, which is a center that we activated in late February, one of the first counties in the state of Oregon to declare a state of emergency, and pulling together county staff across all different departments, bringing them together as one team to respond to this unprecedented response. Activated now for over 200 days, I'm sure you can all believe it, because we're all living it. Certainly a challenging time. The focus of the Operations Center has been making sure that our first responders, our healthcare workers have the essential personal protective equipment that they need, because with this global pandemic, a lot of the supply chains have been really disrupted. So making sure that they have what they need to help patients. We, as you can imagine, that the messaging and the need for communications and guidance for businesses, for our long-term care facilities across the county, for schools, it continues to just change and change and change as we learn more information. And then I would say also from the public health perspective, we have usually seven staff that respond to infectious diseases and call folks and try to provide consultations for them, trying to give them guidance on what they need to do to get treatment or to prevent further spread of a disease. We've had to increase our staffing. Right now we're at 55 staff that are doing this work just to keep up. So we're nearing 2,000 cases as a county. We're doing, when you compare us to some of the other counties near us, we're doing quite well. I would say in general right now, the cases are pretty flat, but we're not seeing them decline. So we're really hoping that we can see that decline so we can continue to move forward with reopening of the community. Hoping that our schools will eventually be able to move towards in-person instruction, but we're not quite there yet. We're also really focused on meeting the needs of our most vulnerable residents, making sure that folks have food boxes. We've distributed thousands of food boxes. We've had to set up a couple of facilities so folks that need to quarantine, so separate themselves from potentially family members, or if they don't have safe housing where they can stay put and not expose others to the disease, we're able to provide them with hotel vouchers or other accommodations. And then we're spending a lot of times with schools right now. So last week, all of the schools were required to submit their plans for how they plan to provide education this upcoming school year. We have over 170 schools within Clackamas County. So we've received all those plans. We have a whole team in place that are reviewing all those plans, providing consultations to our school partners, helping make sure they're doing all that they can to prepare for in-person instruction for the students. And also schools can provide in-person instruction for folks living with a disability or other special needs. And that's sort of how we're beginning some of the in-person instruction within Clackamas County. But for the most part, our schools have had to modify their approaches to do comprehensive distance learning to begin the school year. What else did I want to share? Something really innovative happening in Clackamas County is we've created something called Go Teams. These are behavioral health staff that are going out into communities wearing face coverings, going door to door, meeting with folks, especially seniors and others that are really isolated, needing support, needing someone to connect with, potentially refer them to other behavioral health services that they may need. And that information, I'm happy to share it with Joseph. It's also available on the county's website. Those are a free service. Someone can come to a neighborhood, a community, a whole team, provide support, provide some counseling, as this is a really, really difficult time for our community. And then I know there's a lot, every meeting I have, there's a lot of questions about reopening of the community. So we are in the phase one. Is the governor has a framework, so there's different phases. We are connected with our neighbors at Multnomah and Washington County. I think, if a lot of people know this at this point, our commissioners have done a wonderful job advocating for our county in terms of the concerns that our numbers are better than our neighbors. That has been a governor decision. I think we've advocated really effectively, and the commissioners have used their influence, but disappointingly at this point, we're still connected with them. We've been told essentially that we are still connected until we meet specific metrics as a region in order to reopen. And, a lot of these metrics, I would say that week to week, we get the data from the state, we look at that. It has to do with looking at testing, it has to do with looking at hospitalization data, cases, and then also really the only indicator that within public health, for the most part, we have control over is how promptly we're able to contact cases or contacts of cases. that we're able, that's really important for response, that we have enough staff, that they're picking up the phone and they're calling people and letting you know if you've been exposed and what you need to do and providing that guidance. Really important control measure. And we're finding, for the most people, the vast majority of our residents are really cooperative. They are answering our phone calls. They're helping us out with providing the information we need. There are a proportion of people who just don't pick up the phone, we can't get a hold of. And very, very rarely are there individuals who just refuse to talk to us. But I would say vast majority. Most weeks we meet that metric. So that's a very, very good thing. What else? I think that's the key messages that I wanted to share. We are, the state is, you might have heard from the media and from the federal administration that they will be ramping up testing. So the state this week has released their framework. We are seeing testing capacity continue to increase over time, which is a very good thing. Test supplies are still fairly limited. So that's why Oregon has some pretty clear guidance and restrictions for who can and cannot receive a test. Also labs, some of the labs, it takes a while to get test results back. Some of you may have experienced that if you've been tested. So, the large hospital systems like OHSU in Providence, they have in-house labs, so they can provide you your test results in 1 or 2 business days. For smaller clinics that have to send it to these national laboratories, sometimes it can take over a week in order for your test results to come back. And that really limits our effectiveness in order to get test results back, get that information, do the contact tracing work that we need to do. So that's been one of our big challenges, just at a national level, not having that infrastructure in place to be able to do the level of laboratory and testing capacity that's needed in order to fully reopen the community in a safe way. I think Joseph, if it's okay, I'll just pause here. Wasn't sure if Commissioner Savas, from his perspective, has anything he wants to share, or if we just want to dive into questions.
Commissioner Savas, you're welcome to unmute your microphone and add your
I think Philip's done a great job. Just take questions. Happy to answer anything that Jonathan can't answer. Or I mean, Philip can't answer. I'm sorry.
If there's a Jonathan on here, I'm happy to have Jonathan answer.
He's coming up.
Yeah, Jonathan will answer another set of questions a little bit later. So one of the things I wanted to ask that popped into my head when you mentioned people not answering the phone was, have you tried sending text messages to some of those numbers where you don't get a response from somebody?
Oh, certainly we do if it's a cell phone. Yeah.
Okay. But otherwise, people have been generally pretty cooperative with contact tracing.
I've looked at the data, and I would say it's just a handful in Clackamas County, which is really a great thing. Shows that there's a level of trust and cooperation, which speaks a lot to our community. I know a lot of places in the country, they're not having nearly the success that we're having, and they're asking us why. I don't have a clear answer of why, besides when we call, folks pick up, which is a very good thing.
Well, it's very helpful in the current circumstances, for sure. At this point, I'd like to invite anybody from the audience to use the raise hand feature in Zoom to let us know if you have any questions for Philip or Commissioner Savas about the county's COVID-19 response. We still have Philip for a few more minutes. If anyone comes up with thinks of any questions, but or if you don't know how to use the raise hand feature, you can unmute yourself. Oh, Jane, you are muted.
I'm having trouble finding the raise hand. So I did have some questions. Maybe I'll just throw them all at you, Philip. What
Sure.
are the regulations right now for who can be tested? What type of contact are you in with other county public health directors? And you mentioned OHSU and Providence. I think, do you know what situation Kaiser has? And that's a nice share screen.
I don't know whose screen that is.
Jim's.
I think
Okay.
Jim Meyer is screen sharing. Maybe he could stop screen sharing.
Yeah, Jim. There we
Thank
go.
you.
Okay, I'll
That's a
try to
lovely one.
remember your question, Jane. So the first was around the testing requirements. In Oregon, currently, the requirements from the state is that you have to be experiencing COVID-like symptoms to be tested, or you have to have been in close contact with someone who has been tested positive for COVID-19. And so the way you'd find that out, of course, is we would be calling you to let you know, and we would help connect you to testing. Kaiser has an in-house lab, so they are able to do more rapid testing, similar to Providence, Legacy, and OHSU, of course, for folks that are Kaiser members. And then your third question was collaboration with the neighboring counties. I meet twice a week formally with my counterparts at Multnomah and Washington County. Also, we have a tri-county health officer program. So you may see Dr. Present often in front with the commissioner. She's our, I see her as kind of my clinical advisor, the chief doctor who, I'm not a physician. I have degrees in public health, but I'm not a physician. She is really the trusted advisor around the science, around infectious disease control. She's kind of the top expert that we rely on for helping with that. And what's nice about having it as a tri-county program is she's the lead for Clackamas, and then there's a lead for Multnomah and Washington, and they have a supervisor who oversees all of their work. And it's very nice that they can provide coverage. She's on vacation this week, her first vacation of 2020, unplugged at home with her daughter, which is very nice that we're able to give her a little bit of a rest to recharge. That's just how intense this has been for her and for us. But yeah, they're a team that can back each other up and share their knowledge and expertise, which is very, very helpful.
Valerie?
Yeah, just a quick question. Does the governor's call to have all schools remain closed extend to all the private schools in Oregon as well?
Yeah, it does. It's just based on the school, public and private, based on the jurisdiction and the metrics. All schools are accountable to the requirements.
Jim?
Yes, Philip, is there any possibility that we might be able to get more testing in the county other than the major hospitals? Is that anything, or is that just impossible to have happen in such a short time frame as we have?
I'll clarify that there, neighborhood clinics, community clinics that you may go to, a lot of them do have the capacity to test. Our Clackamas County health centers, for example, they have the ability to test as well. They have a drive-through in Sunnyside at their Sunnyside location, and then in Oregon City up on the hill. The issue is that they have to then ship it to one of these national labs.
That's what I meant. Is there any place other than the major hospitals that are able to test them, have the tests analyzed?
Not very easily. So unless they have an in-house lab that they can do the lab themselves, majority have to send it out. It sounds like Oregon will be getting a lot more funding to support expansion of testing. I just saw the framework this week that's going to be shared out widely to the public pretty soon. But the details of how that actually gets implemented, I don't think we know yet. I'm hoping as the weeks come along, we'll get more information on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mark, I see you have your hand up.
Sure. Thank you. So I may not have all the details right, but I understand that CDC is now saying that folks that have been around people that test positive may not need to get tested, which seems inconsistent with the idea of sort of figuring out where this is occurring and being able to do source tracking. And so do you have any insight on that? And if that's a CDC recommendation, is the state obliged to follow that recommendation?
I would need to look into that a little bit more to give you a specific answer. I know that, CDC sets frameworks and then each state applies the guidance and rules based on what their resources and capacity can allow. We're still following that in Oregon, that if you've been in contact with someone for 15 minutes or more is the standard that we're using right now, that if you've been within 6 feet of someone for 15 minutes or more, we consider you a close contact and you're a priority to get tested. And until I hear otherwise, that's what we're doing.
Any other questions? I don't see any more hands, and I don't see anyone waving at the camera. So awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Philip. We really appreciate you taking your time to share information about the county's response to this pandemic. And we're definitely unprecedented in all of our lifetimes, and so we certainly appreciate getting the update from you about how things are going with it, how the county is going about its processes. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Really appreciate all you and continuing to come together in this virtual way to help your community. Joseph, you have my email, so if folks think of questions later tonight or anytime really, feel free to send them my way, and I'll get a response for you if you think of things.
Yeah, we'll include your contact information if that's okay in the follow-up email that we'll send.
Perfect. Out. Sounds good. Okay, thanks everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. And so with that, we will go back to our presentation screen really briefly. And now I would like to introduce Jonathan Posley to let us know about the Children's Safety Levy that Clackamas County voters will get to vote on in November. Jonathan, please unmute your microphone and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Joseph. Yes, I'm actually here with my colleague, Dave Hunt, who can speak to a little bit more of the history of the measure, if we have time to do that. Right now, the campaign is just getting going, and we have Commissioner Savas with us, who's going to speak to it as well. We have a coalition of many nonprofits in the county working together. Would love for your help. So at this time, would it be okay if I turn it over to Dave?
Commissioner, you want to go?
Or the commissioner
go first, or what's your preference, Paul?
Sure. I can just start with just a county high-level overview of what's going on, and then turn it over to Dave and Jonathan for all the questions about the campaign and the details. Several weeks ago, about a month ago, we knew this was coming, but we were approached by a coalition to put this measure on the ballot. The county has always struggled with our funding through the state in order to fund issues like domestic violence and children's services and so on. We do get some funding, but it's not stable, and even in our best of times, it's not as much as we would like. So this is a great opportunity for everyone in Clackamas County to have stabilized funding for abused children. I'm going to read some of the things out of the explanatory statement, just to give you an idea of what it covers. So the levy will be used to provide services for Clackamas County youths who have experienced either violence, abuse, or neglect. And the services that are included is, for example, forensic analysis, medical assessments, emergency shelters for victims of child abuse and neglect, sexual assault, violence, trafficking, and domestic violence. It also provides for case management and advocacy, safety planning, trauma recovery services, mental health, behavioral health, addiction prevention, intervention, treatment counseling, legal representation and advocacy, mentoring, court-based advocacy and support, parenting support, education, and skill building. And that's just to name a few. Some of us have been very fortunate in our lives to be raised in a stable home with parents who have the skills or had the skills to raise us, and some children don't have that level of care, or their parents don't have those skills, or they're just in a bad family situation. So this is really important because people have, when they have an adverse child experience, we call that ACE, or have an ACE score. If they have a number of adverse child experiences, they're more likely to abuse others when they grow up, and they're very likely to have incidences with either the law or whatnot, and not really fit into society as best as possible. That's not to everyone, but there's just a higher propensity for people later in life to go wrong if they've had a difficult childhood. So this is, a long-term effort, I think, to invest in our community and make Clackamas County a better place. And that's my high-level overview. It's about 15 cents per thousand. So for a $300,000 assessed home, that would be about $45 a year. It's a 5-year levy. It would have to be renewed by the taxpayers for the second 5 years. And there will be a board that'll be appointed by the county commissioners to oversee how the grant process goes. They'll be by grants. The money will go to nonprofits that apply for the grants and meet all the criteria. And so that's my high-level overview. And I'm sure that Dave and Jonathan can provide a lot more detail about that. They've been at this for a long, long time. And so we're just happy to be a part of this program. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Commissioner Savas, and I really appreciate your reference to the long, long time, because this has actually been 10 years in the making. In fact, I was looking back, Commissioner Savas, at the board that 10 years ago that expressed support for it, and that board has changed over dramatically multiple times. You're one of the last remaining people there. But it really, I think the good news is over these 10 years, there's been a lot of refinement to it, a lot of learning about it. Frankly, I think much greater awareness about what can be done, not just on the back end to assist children and youth that have been victims of abuse and neglect, but what can be done much more on the front end. We know a lot more about ACEs scores to be able to identify children and youth that are much more susceptible to abuse, and how to get ahead of these things. So the best practices are better. I think there are a few things that are different from other measures that we may have seen on previous ballots. First of all, I loved in the previous conversation where there was conversation about how we are just inextricably tied to Multnomah and Washington County. This is the exact opposite. This is all about Clackamas County. All the dollars will stay here serving Clackamas County kids. And another thing that really makes it unique is most levies that you think about that we've considered are typically funding public government services. That's just normal for a levy, whether it's a school levy or a county levy or public safety levy or whatever. This, as Commissioner Savas said, is going through to fund nonprofit services. And so the bang for the buck you get is just so much greater because nonprofits, frankly, the dollars just go further, and they are really in touch. You have the best of both worlds, the benefit of county oversight and the benefit of the county actually awarding the dollars and monitoring these nonprofits, but the service delivery happening through the nonprofits. As Commissioner Savas said, it's 5 years, so it would come back to voters at that point and could be renewed or not. Just to give you a little flavor, I'd really encourage you to go to the yesforclackamuskids.org website, and that's yesforclackamuskids.org. Maybe, John, you can put that in the chat. But the endorsers of this are just one of the broadest, oddest groups of people you're ever going to see. I'll just read you a few names and you'll get a flavor of that. from Jim Bernard to Paul Savas to John Ludlow, from Karin Power to Vern Duncan to Patrick Sheehan, from Riz Bradshaw to Craig Roberts to Angie Brandenburg, from the Happy Valley Business Alliance to Clackamas Women's Services to Northwest Family Services, and just everybody in between. I mean, just that list, I'm not sure that list would agree on the color of the sky, leave alone anything else. And so I think it really is, that the one other thing I'd note is I think this levy was a good idea 10 years ago, a year ago, 5 months ago. But one thing we've really learned in the pandemic is child abuse is up. There's more child abuse that is happening in homes, not just in our county, but across the country. There are fewer eyes on kids because schools and child care centers are so restricted right now. And the severity of that abuse is on the increase. So if there was ever a time to pass this, this creates, I think, a real opportunity for Clackamas County voters, like all of us. I'll stop there, Mr. Chair, and I'm sure any of the three of us would be happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you all very much for sharing that information. And I'd at this time like to invite members of our audience to, again, to either use the raise hands feature, or if you'd prefer to wave at your camera, and I'll see if I can catch you. Let's see, I'll unmute your microphone. Or I see your name is James Troy Kurth, but I know that's not who's waving. Please unmute your microphone and feel free to ask your question.
This is Janine.
Janine,
Yeah. So with that in mind, so with the increase in abuse, how are those kids going to get access to the services, or how is the outreach going to occur to help those kids in such a high risk situation?
Well, if you look at these nonprofits, they have not stopped. I mean, child care centers and schools may be required to close, but you can look, I mean, the Children's Center is still seeing children who are suspected of abuse or neglect. Clackamas County CASA is still pairing volunteers with foster kids. They've had to do it in a virtual way and or a socially distanced way. Clackamas Women's Services is alive and very active. Domestic violence reports are up. So I can't think, maybe Commissioner Savas can think of, I can't think of any of these nonprofits that are not actively functioning. And in a lot of cases, they're more active during the time of the pandemic because of these challenges.
Do they reach out to the parents, or is there like a hotline for the parents or the kids to reach out to if they're in that situation?
There is a, go ahead.
Yeah, there is we do have a hotline. I believe I was going to look online while we're talking, and if I don't find it, but I believe 211 has a lot of services online. I believe it's listed there, but I'll look for it and provide it after the thought if I don't find it right away. And I did want to add that if we can tie any of this to COVID or the increase in COVID, we think we could possibly get some federal funding through the CARES Act funding. So there might be a way to fill the gap during this time of crisis.
Yeah, well, wouldn't you think that with the COVID and the kids being at home with all, with parents who are slightly unstable, I mean, school was a safe place to be. Now they can't do that. But with some of them being online, though, I mean, I wonder if that would, intervene on any situations at home if the kids were being taught online.
Well, one of the stories that I was talking to a family member about in another state, my sister in California is she's in HR, and what they're realizing in that company there is that in other companies they're talking to down in that area, in the Bay Area, is that when people leave work, they take their home, if they have a bad day, they're driving home, they have a chance to unwind. Now that we're working virtually, you click off that meeting, you're home, and you don't have that opportunity to unwind. So the numbers are a very modest 25% increase in domestic violence. I'm sure it's higher in other areas, but
Yeah.
It's not a good place when someone has a bad day at work and they're at home.
Yeah.
So it's just not a good situation.
So how much of the funding goes towards helping and getting the parents the help that they need to be able to cope for coping skills?
Right.
Yeah.
Is any of the money go to that, or does it all go just to the kids?
There's one line in here that talks about training and helping the parents. So I'm going to find the line here that I read earlier. Parenting support, education, and skill building. So that would, and strengthening economic supports for families. So there is tools in there or services that can be provided to help the parents cope.
Okay, good. That's important.
Yeah.
And I did add in a chat, in addition to the local 211 number that Commissioner Savas mentioned, I typed in there the statewide child abuse reporting number that is a toll-free number and accessible anywhere. And I mean, I think the good news, if you look at the services provided by this really broad range of Clackamas County based nonprofits, they're doing amazing work. The challenge is not that they don't know what to do to prevent abuse on the front end, and in some cases to intervene and stop abuse. The challenge is just, as Commissioner Savas said earlier, the lack of resources to fully fund those services so all kids have access to them. And that's what this is going to do, is going to get much closer to serving all the Clackamas County kids who need it.
And we can put that contact information in our follow-up email as well. Jane, I see you have your hand raised.
This, I guess, is mostly a question for Dave Hunt. How would this tie in with or overlap with the Clackamas Children's Services that exists now, or the Children's Center in Clackamas County?
And it's a great question, Jane. And if you look at that yesforclackamuskids.org, you'll see that the Children's Center, Clackamas Women's Services, Clackamas County CASA, Northwest Housing Alternatives, I mean, just about every organization in our county that you can think about is, in fact, I can't think of one that's in our county that is not endorsing this measure, because they see it as really, again, with the county in an oversight role and evaluating what is happening, these dollars are going to be deployed through the county to these nonprofits. And so, you'll notice the measure does not say X dollars for the Children's Center or Y dollars for Clackamas Women's Services, because that wouldn't be appropriate, because there might not be any particular organization in future years, or there may be new organizations that pop up to meet new needs dealing with children's abuse and neglect. But we know that the organizations you mentioned and lots of others in our county are there. They're providing great services, and they're enthusiastically supporting these measures.
It would be an addendum and a boon to what they're already doing then.
Absolutely. It really increases capacity, because just about every one of those organizations, I mean, if you talk to the Children's Center or CWS or Northwest Housing Alternatives or any of them, they will all tell you they are not able to keep up with the need. I think Clackamas County CASA, I think they provide CASAs for about half of the foster children in our county. And so this is going to make a huge difference for those kids.
Valerie.
I just want to say I'm really excited about this children's levy. I have one of my daughters worked as a social worker in Clackamas County and with Children's Services for some time. The caseload in Clackamas County was so heavy. She actually went to Multnomah County to work because it was less in Multnomah than it was in Clackamas. So the funding is really needed. I just want to kind of share what I think I heard Janine say, because I think it's a concern that many people would have right now, is that if a child is actually being abused and not going to school, there's a chance that nobody would see that. So I hope that there is some creative way. I mean, they're not necessarily low-income families. It could be. I mean, through the lunch program, there might be a way of getting some contact with these kids. And maybe some method of just checking into history and then doing some checking individually on those households, because I share that fear that children are going to drop through the cracks because nobody can see them. And if they're abused, their parents can keep them out of the public eye. So thank you for working on this. I think this is a great thing, but I also share that concern.
Well said.
Do we have more questions from the audience? And you can use the raise hand feature, or you can turn on your camera and wave. We'll see you. Well, it looks like that might be all the questions we have. I really want to thank all three of you for presenting on this, and Jonathan and Dave, thank you for joining us, specifically for this topic. It's obviously a really important issue, and it's a good opportunity to provide a stable source of funding, come November. So thanks again for your time. We really appreciate having you guys join us tonight.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for having us.
And so with that, I'd like to invite our Vice Chair, Valerie Chapman, to introduce this topic and let us know, what we can do regarding the BCC's, we'll say recent resolution condemning racism, although I think it was back in June at this point, but still fairly recent. So Valerie, please take it away.
Sure. And we did send this resolution out along a link to it with the agenda. On June the 18th, the Board of County Commissioners put out a resolution condemning violence and racism directed at Black, African Americans, and all people of color. What we were in our board meeting, in our conversation, what we were hoping to do is tonight is to maybe have a little bit of discussion, but also have a way, an agreement that we could write a statement of affirmation to the Board of County Commissioners in support of this resolution. So with that, I just would like to see if there are people that have comments about it, or statements I'd like to make, or questions they have about this particular resolution.
Valerie, I wonder if you want to read the resolution for people who are on the telephone?
Well, we could read the resolution. It's actually quite long.
Well, maybe just that front.
Yeah, which is why we sent it out. If there are people that have not seen it and would like us to summarize or do that, perhaps they could raise their hand and let us know that. Or if they're on the phone, speak up.
I'm not seeing any hands raised, Valerie.
Okay. So with that, is there a motion from the floor that would for the Oak Grove Community Council to express an affirmation, write an affirmation statement to the Board of County Commissioners in support of this resolution? And I see that Eleanor's hand is raised. Eleanor, if you
And
unmute.
I am honored, and I'm honored to make a motion to adopt that resolution, and for the Oak Grove Community Council to affirm that and write that resolution in support of it. Yes, please.
Is there a second?
This is Mark. I'd be happy to second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion on this? I see Jane's hand is up.
I just wonder, in particular on section 4, we will review all policies and ordinance for discriminatory impacts. We will engage in listening and learning, but other than review and engage, it doesn't seem that the county board is specifically listing any actions that they will be taking. I wonder if Commissioner Savas would like to list or talk to that about anything that the board is actually considering doing actively, short of reviewing and in listening.
Sure. I'm happy to. I'm looking for a copy of it, or maybe Valerie, could you scroll down to the therefore, be it resolved, those 5 bullets, please?
Joseph has got that on there, so.
Okay, great. So, of relevance to Jane's question, therefore be it resolved, we scroll down to 4 and 5. Okay, this is probably where the action will probably be most evident. We will number 4. We will review all policies and ordinance for any discriminatory impacts and practices and encourage other jurisdictions to do the same. So I appreciate the Oak Grove Community Council, so to speak, endorsing this and affirming what you're taking an action for. Other organizations have done same. And we held a listening session on racism last week. We had very good attendance. And that was the first, that was just that. We were starting to listen to figure out how we can do that. When it comes to the law enforcement side, for those of you who don't know, the sheriff in most all counties in the state of Oregon is elected, and they write their own policies. So we're hoping, we have a new Under Sheriff Angie Brandenburg is the sheriff-elect. So we hope that we can actually get a higher level of cooperation and collaboration with the sheriff to make sure that in the sheriff's office, for example, in the jail and all the law enforcement that we're doing, and we're looking at all our policies. And that goes for every department, by the way. So we are actively engaged in that. So that's one important step that staff will be looking at. We also hired a new EDI, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Officer, Martine Koblenz. She happens to be a Gladstone resident. She's got a lot on her plate, but we're excited to have her continue the work and build on the work that's been done at Clackamas County since we passed our first resolution many years ago. And so number 5 here, I think this gets to where I have a lot of this resonates with me. We will engage in listening and learning opportunities with communities of color to learn of their experiences to better help in improving policies and practices that include, but not limited to, law enforcement, our justice system, economic disparities, education disparities, and land use and transportation policies that displace communities and low-income families disproportionately. So that's a lot, but there's a lot there. So if you, so the listening, I think what's valuable with the listening session, we had about 100-something people that were listening. Some people raised their hands and they shared their stories. And I've always found that those stories and people telling their real life experiences is powerful. And it gives us an idea, those of us who are white that live with a white privilege, a better understanding of what people of color experience and go through, which we can't really understand because we're not in their shoes. We don't have those experiences. So when we learn more about that, we all share that knowledge, and we can be better armed and prepared to help deal with that. So that hopefully that will trickle down. Same thing goes, law enforcement, as I mentioned, our justice system, education disparities is huge. And as you probably, some of you probably are aware of, I've been advocating for a long time in this area when it comes to land use and transportation policies that displace people of color and low-income families. That's a big deal. Anyone who caught the news tonight, Channel 12, they did a great piece on what they're doing in Portland for people that have been displaced. And they're primarily the African-American community has been displaced. They figured 10,000 residents, African-American residents were displaced in Portland over the years. And that's a lot. So they're building housing for them to relocate them back in the neighborhoods where they grew up in. And They have a name for that. It's called right to return. And it's basically the theory is you should be able to live in the community you grew up in, essentially. I mean, if you can afford that, that's fine. There's not a law that says you know that anyone has to do that, but it shouldn't negatively affect people of color disproportionately more so than white people or people of low income as well. So that's a lot, but I can tell you that number 4 and 5 we're going to be working on really hard, and I'm personally committed. I know my colleagues are, but I can just tell you I am personally committed to this one, and I'm just excited that we have this opportunity.
Thank you. Commissioner Eleanor has her hand raised. Eleanor?
Thank you, Paul. You actually wound up answering my question. I was really wanting to ask specifically about housing, so that just knowing that land use policy, equals housing. That was what I just wanted to make sure it was clear and included in all that. So thank you so much for your wonderful elucidation of your passion and your desire for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor.
So I do want to, as a point of order, remind that we have a motion from Eleanor that was seconded by Mark to send a letter to the Board of County Commissioners to affirm this resolution on condemning racism. Are we ready to take a vote on this? And given our attendance, we will need to poll voting members only individually. And so with that, I would like to request Jan, if you could unmute yourself and do a roll call of voting members in attendance.
I actually need my screen, which I can't access right now.
Do I need to, is that on the?
Yeah, for some reason, if you put screen sharing back up, I think I can pull up my attendance record.
There you go.
There we go. All righty. Okay, so voting members, I'm gonna call your name and then you wanted me to just call their name and they can say yes or no, or Joseph?
Yes, I think that's what we're gonna have to do.
Okay, sounds good. Hold on one second then.
We'll have to unmute everyone, Joseph.
Yeah, can you unmute en masse?
We might get some feedback, but we can.
We'll give it a shot.
We can unmute as we go.
Okay, so Pat Callender.
Nobody's gonna be there.
Are you there, Pat? Okay, Pat might have dropped off. How about Susan Casuto?
You didn't say it here. Do you want to, Susan? Do you want to?
Joseph, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't hear.
And everyone can unmute themselves. We don't have that feature locked down. So as you call a name, everyone should be able to unmute themselves and give a response.
Yeah. Okay. Or you can raise your hand if you're visible, I guess.
It's easier if you take the no's instead of the yeses.
Oh, that's a good idea. But people won't know if they're a voting member or not. I think the only change is Rich Nippon is you're a voting member, and he's aware of that. Is anyone who thinks they're a voting member not in favor of the resolution?
I mean, that would require everyone turning on their cameras, or using the raise hand feature. So I was just thinking it'd be easier to poll everybody individually.
Okay. Yeah. Susan Casuto, can you hear me?
She's left the meeting.
She left the meeting. Okay. How about Valerie?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. All right. And how about Jane Civiletti?
Yes.
All righty. How about Sue Conahan?
Yes.
Okey-dokey. Janine Defiler?
Yes.
Excellent. And how about Dave Doback?
Yes.
And Jan Doback?
Yes.
Thank you. And how about Joseph?
Yes.
Excellent. Will Farley? Will, are you there? All right, we don't know about Will. How about Thelma?
Yes.
All righty. And Pam Horan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Will Farley
Eleanor?
gave a thumbs up.
Will Farley, thumbs up. Got it.
Yep.
And Eleanor Hunter?
Absolutely.
All righty, with bells on. James Troy Kirk?
Yes.
Thank you. Mark Knudsen?
Yes.
Perfect, and I am a yes. Jim Meyer?
Yes.
Gwion Miller? Gwion, are you muted? Valerie, are you next to Gwion? Can you ask him? Valerie, do you hear me?
Yeah, he put his thumb up.
He put his thumb up. Okay, excellent. So we have Gwion for a yes. How about Linda Newbloom?
Yes.
Thank you. And Paul Savas?
Yes.
All righty.
Did you get Dick Nafone?
Hold on. Oh, he's in the other
Yes,
column, but
I'm
I
a
have to
yes.
move him over. Yes. Rich or Dick,
Yes.
either one? How are you
Either
voting?
one. Yes.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you. And Baldwin Vanderbilt?
Yes.
Thank you. I think that's it for the voting members. Does it look like I missed anybody?
I don't think so.
Okay. I have Nate.
I don't see anybody
but I don't
crying out
think
in
he's-
protest either.
Yeah. I will double check, but it looks like that's it.
Okay, great. So it sounds like we had a unanimous from those in attendance passage of affirming that resolution. And so I'll be happy to work with Valerie to put that together and get that sent off in the next several days. Let's see. Valerie, do you want to add anything further before we move on?
No, I think that's good. I think that we are going to continue to address some things in Oak Grove Community Council. So as we go along, other ideas will come up and paying attention. So thank you all for participating.
Okay, so now is the part where we talk about LUART, so the land use application review team. And while there has been a very slow, steady trickle of land use applications, there really hasn't been anything major. And so we haven't been putting together, any review materials for a presentation on those, but we'll have some follow-up. Next month, I expect that we'll be talking about this a little bit more. The reason for that is because we have some well, first of all, we have some news to report, and second of all, we also have the upcoming opportunity to make requests of the Planning Division for the next biannual work program. So the first thing I want to announce is that the Board of County Commissioners on August 5th, they verbally approved the amendments to legalize bakeries and brew pubs in the commercial districts. And so that's a really exciting news. This is something that we had worked on over the past couple of years, asking the county to prioritize this, and they have done so. And those amendments have now been basically agreed to be adopted, and that's tentatively scheduled for September 10th, at which point we'll learn what dates that those regulations will take effect. And then the goal at that point would be to make sure everybody knows that they can now open a bakery or a brew pub here, and hopefully we can hook up landowners that are looking for those kinds of investments with people who are looking to make those kinds of investments, and our community will win. So hopefully that can happen pretty soon, but it's really exciting news to see, one of these efforts, work their way to actually include amendments to be adopted. So that's great.
Are there current people looking to open bakeries and brew pubs, or is this just speculation at this point?
What prompted this was kind of the combination of community members asking for it, and the fact that we were contacted by prospective investors who wanted to open a brew pub in the historic downtown Oak Grove neighborhood or along McLaughlin if historic downtown Oak Grove wasn't possible, and we found out that really neither was possible. And so that really kicked off this process where we knew that we had prospective investors who wanted to actually do something here, and the regulations wouldn't allow it. And so we may have lost some of those investors along the way because it's been a couple years now, and obviously with COVID-19, different people are in different places in terms of capacity to invest. But we do have landowners in historic downtown Oak Grove that are interested in having a brew pub or a bakery, and it's just a matter of finding the right connections to make that work out. But yeah, it's a combination of expressed interest and speculation.
Okay, I was just wondering if there were opportunities for people in the neighborhood to invest in that, or if there were specific people that were interested in doing it.
Right now, what we've heard is from specific people, but generally once you're able to do something, then we might find out that there's been more interest bubbling under the surface that we weren't aware about.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. So another long-range planning is the county's housing strategies project is moving forward into its phase one. It's a 3-phase effort that will last another couple of years, I think, or at least another year and a half. And this ties into some of what we were talking about before with the land use policy and housing policy, and how that adversely affects communities of color. And so this the working group of community members and county staff has been formed and has scheduled their first meeting for September 2nd. And I will be attending that meeting. Pastor Heather from the Oak Grove Methodist Church is also in that group. And so we're looking forward to moving that work forward and being able to share the community's priorities for housing strategies and housing policy at the county level over the next year and a half probably. So that's coming up. And then the next thing that we wanted to bring up is probably next month at the regular September meeting of the OGCC, we'll have more of an interactive session where we can discuss kind of what our priorities are for land use policy work moving forward. We have the opportunity to, there's a few different venues where we can submit requests, including MAP-IT regarding McLaughlin area plan priorities, or the CPO summit, or we can submit requests on our own to the planning division directly to have priorities worked into their biannual, it's now biannual instead of annual, biannual long-range planning work program. And so, as I mentioned earlier, some of the past requests that we've submitted were bakeries and brew pubs. And that one's actually turned out with good news, and that's great. The Park Avenue Community Project is another one that we asked for years. And that was also a MAPIT priority. And that project is now in its phase 2 and is moving towards its conclusion with proposed zoning amendments. And then the tree protection ordinance might still be a little bit of a sore spot, but that's an example of another one where we had requested the county to prioritize the long-range planning resources for land use policy that really represents our community's priorities. So these kinds of things, we'd like to hear from you, what your priorities are, what you think that the priorities for the Elk Grove Community Council should be. And you can feel free to send those to our email address. You can either ask them now, or you can send them to our email address at contact@oakgrovecpo.org. And we'll put together a list of those ideas, and we'll come back next month with some more questions and opportunity to comment and discuss some of those ideas so that we can put together a request before the end of the year. With that, I'd like to move us into our committee updates. So Jan, do you have any updates from the Concord Property and Library Planning Task Force?
There's not a huge update. We reviewed the community feedback from the survey that the JLA Public Involvement in the county put together, and the good news is that most people were in favor of option 2, which is the option of a freestanding building just to the, I'm going to say, north side of the building, although I frequently get that wrong. That was the one the task force favored. Most of the public feedback that came in favored that as well, or the majority of it. So it's good to know that the community is in line with the task force. We are going to have further refinements at the next meeting and another presentation by the architecture firm. And then we're going to vote on basically, yes, option 2, we want to move forward with that. So that is the next meeting, and I can tell you the date if you give me a second. Or maybe I can't. I'm not sure, but we'll send it out for the next meeting. And
awesome, thanks, John.
That's about it.
Cool. Valerie, do you have any updates from the Park Avenue Community Project?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody in the Oak Grove community who took the time to fill out the survey that was online that talked about the framework, which is the visioning plan for the Park Avenue area. We had 289 people participate in the survey, which was really good. We've had to really work to do community engagement during the pandemic, but voices are still really important. And I just also want to say, of the 289 respondents, 65% of them indicated that they either live, work, or own property in the area. So we're really trying to get those voices, but we also need the voices of the whole community, because a lot of people come through that area and have vested interest in what's going to happen there. So thank you for that. And with that said, I want to say that our next workshop will be online, will be on September the 16th, which is a Wednesday night. That will be from 6:30 until 8 in the evening. And we'll try to get more information sent out about that via our email list. Our next Park Avenue meeting is not August 12th, that already happened. It's going to be September 9th from 6 to 8. And people are always welcome to come for our meetings. We are moving out of the visioning plan. We've been working on the framework plan, which was kind of interesting for people to engage with. And we're going to do the kind of thing that only people that are really into design codes and things like that can have a great enjoyment out, but we're going to try to do the best we can. And I really have a lot of confidence in the consulting team to help create an interactive experience. So for the workshop on the 16th, the survey will actually go online, both in English and Spanish, starting on the 9th of September. So it'll predate the workshop a little bit. but we're trying to get as many people as possible to participate in that. So with our visioning plan, we can, as a community, think about what we would like to have and where we might like crossings, where we'd like to have more housing, et cetera. But it's kind of like bakeries and brew pubs. If you can really want them, but if the zoning doesn't allow them, then you can't have them. So we're moving into the phase where the design and the zoning codes will be put together so that we can conclude this project by presenting it to the Board of County Commissioners. The goal is to be able to do that in October or early November. The committee will, I think our last meeting will be in October. So that's all I have to say about that, unless there's any questions. And there is a website through the county for the Park Avenue development.
Cool. Well, thank you, Valerie. That's really exciting news, and I believe that my involvement with that project is coming up on its 6-year anniversary, and so really excited to see this coming to a conclusion as well. It's really great news.
Joseph, I just wanted to
see.
add that it's Jan. The next meeting for the Concord Task Force is September 10th at 5:30. If anyone wants to participate, it's a Zoom meeting, and the link is on the county's website.
Okay, great. And we'll send notices about the corrected Park Avenue Community Advisory Committee meeting and the next Concord Library planning meeting in our follow-up email. So thank you both. Additionally, I wanted to let everybody know about North Clackamas Watershed Council is having one of their first public Zoom and interactive workshops. And so that'll be on Tuesday, September 29th. That'll be after our next meeting, so I'll have the chance to announce it again next month. But we wanted to let you know that you can go to this website, which we will include again in our follow-up, which is tinyurl.com/NC-watersheds, and you can register for the event to get to know North Clackamas Watersheds. And the other thing that we like to do every month is let everyone know about what advisory boards and commissions are recruiting. And so again, we'll link to these in our follow-up email. Right now, these is the Audit Committee, which is due tomorrow, and Board of Property Tax Appeals, Community Health Council, Community Road Advisory Committee, and then the NCPRD District Advisory Board is coming up in just under 2 weeks, I guess, or just under a week, I guess. And then the Vector Control District. So those are the ABCs that are currently recruiting. And again, we'll include a link to that page in our follow-up email. This time I'd like to invite any members from the floor if there are any announcements that they would like to. And you can use the raise hands feature or wave at the camera or unmute yourself and start talking, because I don't see a lot of competition. Okay, well, I think that is pretty much going to do it for us. I'll go back over here just really quick and show our upcoming schedule. Our next board meeting is actually Monday, August 31st, because the first Monday in September is Labor Day. And so we'll be meeting on Monday to plan for our September meeting. That'll be September 23rd, the next time that we'll see all of you again. And so with that, thank you very much for attending. I really appreciate everyone taking their time to be with us tonight. It's great to see everybody again.
Thank you.
And we can stop recording. Very good. Thanks, everybody.